Motivation's easy. I'm a history geek. Love history as much as I started off doing American Revolution, but I've always loved War of 1812 because I grew up in the Niagara region, and it's kind of, I mean, you can go to Queenston Heights, everything, and it's all close. I've been doing this since 1994, and as I said, my main motivation is I love history, and I love the idea of bringing this part of Canadian history, which is, well, Canadian and American history, which is really overlooked by both sides, to life, so people will know more of who we are and where we came from.
Have you always played the U.S. soldier?
Nope. I started off doing British. But I have a lot of people that say, oh, well, you do U.S., you must be disloyal, or some other garbage like that. Partly, it's, well, for lack of a better term, it's partly based on numbers. Up in Canada, there are more people that do the British side than the American side. U.S., it's quite different. There's considerably more Americans that do American side than British. So it's strictly numbers. If you look at a battle, you'll see many more British than there are Americans. And I just want to keep the sides even. As well, to be honest, the American side, I find the feel from it is much more of a family. Partly, I imagine, because we are much smaller. So you tend to know pretty much everyone. The British side is much more, it's British. It's very regimented, it's much more structured. Units tend to just stick to units. The American side, as I said, partly because we are so small, we know lots of people, and units don't really play into it that much. We'll form into units on the battle, but afterwards, you know, if you look around, you'll see guys from all sorts of different units hang out because we're all friends.
So is that why you formed the 21st?
I formed the 21st U.S. Treats Company because the story of Joseph Treat was extremely compelling. He was a captain, well, in the 21st, who was wrongfully accused of cowardice at the Battle of Chippewa and stripped of his command by General Brown. It took him more than a year to clear his name. And I've always felt that by recreating the 21st U.S. Treats Company, you're doing justice to that man. And Joseph Treat was an interesting person. He was very highly thought of by not just the men in his own unit, but people in other regiments, the Brigadier General of the unit, the Brigadier General of several other different brigades. He was so highly thought of that actually when Treat was stripped of command, the Treat's Company rioted for a week. And the person that was put in Treat's place, who was elevated to captain, immediately resigned his commission. So did the next person who was elevated to captain. In the span from July 5th of 1814 to July 25 of 1814, they went through 4 lieutenants. 3 of them resigned their commission. 1 was killed at the Battle of Lundy's Lane on July 25th when they were storming the guns. But yeah, I do the 21st U.S. because the story is so fascinating.
Since you're Canadian, do you have trouble recruiting U.S. soldiers for the 21st? If so, how do you overcome it?
Military reenacting, I think in general, tends to attract a very specific group of people. You get the few people that are doing it, you know, because we got guns and we run around and shoot at things. You know, it's the whole cowboys and Indians or playing war. A large section of us tend to be more scholarly. We enjoy the research behind it. We enjoy recreating that end of it. And as you can see around, the life of it. Now, that being said, recruiting is that because we speak to a very small group of people, we have a very small section that we can draw from. And especially up in Canada, a lot of them are snapped up by British units. The 41st Regiment of Infantry, which is a British unit, has or can field on paper about 100 men. The largest U.S. unit comparatively is the 22nd U.S., which can field about 20. So yeah, it's very difficult to get people, but not so much because we're doing American, still a factor, but more so just because we have such a small group that we appeal to.
How did you achieve your rank?
It's funny when in the U.S. on the U.S. side, no one wants rank. Everyone wants to stay in the ranks as a private. Usually, I portray a private. How I'm dressed right now is actually as a surgeon. The only time I take a rank is when we've got the numbers to determine it, or really, we have to have an officer on the field, so I become the officer on the field. Getting rank, a lot of people think, oh, well, you just put on a fancy uniform and that's it, and you're an officer. Well, yeah, there are people that do that, and those people don't tend to be highly thought of. A lot of people in the hobby, for example, over there, Betsy Bayshore and Rob Trumbull. Rob has been in the hobby for over 30 years. His knowledge of the period, the tactics, everything else is highly respected and highly sought out. He's become the colonel of the American side because of that, and because pretty much all the American side says, yeah, we want you to be the overall commander. Command in a unit is, each unit does it a bit differently, but usually everyone else decides one person will be the officer, and that person's like, I don't want to be, but he gets stuck with it.
Why is reenacting important?
It keeps a facet of history alive. Without it, when you get down to it, history is generally pretty boring. You know, you read books, a lot of the books are just, well, this person fought at this time, and these people died, and that's it. There's no connection, because it's just numbers, it's just facts, figures, nothing. This is a people's story. People coming into the camps can see us living as we do, in tents, eating food cooked over an open fire, and they walk away with the understanding of, okay, you know, life was not just facts and figures. Life was actually real and human. And they see soldiers dying on the field, and it's like, okay, so that's how it all happened. And again, without reenacting or things like that, different military sites, different forts have paid interpreters who do much like we do. History would just disappear. Or at least, history wouldn't be interesting to most people.
What is it about reenacting the War of 1812 that appeals to you more than other types of reenactors?
Speaking as a Canadian, the War of 1812 defined Canada as a nation. You know, people say Canadians don't have a specific identity, and some say, well, our identity starts off by saying we're not American. But I think it was more than that. The war taught, well, at that time, the fledgling Upper and Lower Canadas and the colonies on the East Coast, that they could stand up to another military power, and they could win, and they could walk proud because of that. Aside from that, yeah, I just enjoy it.
Is there camaraderie between Royal Forces and U.S. forces, or do each side primarily socialize on their own?
I have friends on both sides, and there tends to be a lot of socializing. When you're in camp, not so much, because there's so many things pulling you in like 10 different directions at once. So you don't tend to get the time to go over and socialize. Like for me, socialize with other guys I know who do the British side or who do the native side or anything like that. But on the downtimes, usually my socializing cross faction is either Fridays when people are just getting here or Sundays. Quite often a lot of events will host, like for example at Fanshawe here, they're having a tavern this evening. A lot of sites will host that, and that's another time to get together with people who are not on your side and socialize and get to know each other and catch up on different things that have gone on in people's lives.
What's the best part about reenacting?
Oh, there's so many good parts. As a soldier, the best part I find is when you're out in the field and you're firing your volleys and the air is still, it's a little humid, and the smoke from the gunpowder just hangs there. And you don't see any much aside from musket flashes off in the distance, and you can hear, you know, soldiers yelling or officers shouting commands or that. And it's just one of those moments when it's like, wow, this is what it's like. Now, that's as a soldier. As sitting in the camp, this is the other best part, is just you've got a lot of people together who have a lot of, their passion is similar, so you can just be yourself and talk about things and just hang out and be with other like-minded people.
What tensions exist within the U.S. side? Are they the same as within the British side? The issues?
I think there's whenever you have, I say to a friend of mine that whenever you have more than 3 people, you have politics. It's just the nature of the beast. People have differing opinions, so they have differing opinions. Tensions, I don't see the tensions as being different than what any other person has. You know, again, you have 2 or 3 people together, you have differing opinions. Just because we're wearing different clothes or that, there's not really any tensions related to the hobby specifically. I mean, there's always friction because people are people. But, as I said, people, well, I don't like him because he's in this unit, or I don't like him because he does that. Doesn't really exist. Or should I say, I've never seen it exist.
So there's no friction between militia and regulars?
If there is, it's all good-natured. We'll tease them about, you know, not being committed to the cause or stuff like that because they're militia, they're weekend warriors type of thing. But generally, no.
Do you believe the U.S. was justified in going to war?
That's a difficult question. Do I think they had justifications? Yes. Because they were a fledgling nation, and you're starting out in something, you start out in a new company or whatever, you're always trying to make your mark, this is who I am, define yourself. Britain at the time, their view was, well, they're just an upstart peasant nation, we can do whatever we want because we rule the seas. So they were justified in that because there comes a time, I actually think it was Henry Clay that says you must either willingly submit or stand up for yourself. So, in that regard, they were justified. Were there other options that could have been pursued? Madison summed it up. He said that if he knew that Napoleon was going to be defeated, he would have never have gone to war, because all of the issues about the war were because of Napoleon. Yeah, I mean, the orders in council, the issues of impressment, all because of Napoleon.
If the U.S. Didn't go to war in 1812, how would history have turned out differently?
I think if the U.S. didn't go to war, that's a real possibility that this part of the country would probably end up becoming states in the Union.
What would you say to someone who was thinking about the 1812 reenactment?
Well, whenever people first coming out, they come out, they give it a shot, they run around in the field, you know, they see what it's like. If they enjoy it, they go from there. If they were thinking about it, the first thing I say is, come out and give it a try. It can be a fairly fair-sized financial commitment, not as bad as golfing, but it can be a big financial commitment. So you try it first. If you like it, then you start looking at getting your uniform, your gun, all that stuff, learning your drill. So yeah, just come out and try it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.